episode 4 of Exes to Allies. Episode 4. So we're talking about triangulation this week and why and how it has affected our relationship as we have navigated living together and all of that. So we're going to start with a definition of triangulation because I think it's important to have everyone on the same page in regards to what we're actually talking about. So the actual definition of triangulation is a manipulation tactic where someone creates tension, conflict, or competition between two other people to maintain control, avoid direct confrontation, or secure their own power in a relationship dynamic. It often involves miscommunication, misinformation, or emotional manipulation to keep the other two parties in opposition or dependent upon the manipulator, which is verbatim what we experienced.
Yep.
Narcissistic individuals specifically use triangulation as a way to create insecurity, foster dependence, and maintain control over their partners. And it typically plays out in a handful of different ways. I'm going to be listing off those ways and giving examples of how that plays into triangulation within romantic dynamics. And then if you want to throw in any examples, lived examples of what you experienced in regards to those specific things. And I will also, if something comes up. So creating jealousy. This keeps the partner on edge, trying to win the narcissist's approval over and over again. An example is subtle suggestions that their partner is not enough. So making comments about other women's bodies, or how attractive they are, or how funny they are, or how smart they are, or how successful they are. Anything to belittle you. Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, her butt looks so good in those pants, knowing full well, I don't have a butt. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you looking at some other girl's juicy booty
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that I know that that's what you're looking at? Right?
Yeah.
Creating jealousy.
Yeah, that happened a lot.
So one
it made me feel like it was me being overly jealous or something.
Of course it was. So one perfect example of that I know of is the ice cream shop incident that he told me about. Where when he told me about it happening, he made it seem like, isn't that so crazy that she did that? Isn't that so jealous and weird that she did that? Mm-hmm. And my exact reaction was, yeah, maybe, but I'm just curious, on your end, what was said that would make her think that that was a necessary move to make, right?
Yeah, he does a lot of flirting, or he did a lot of
right?
flirting.
And even if he didn't flirt, maybe he made some comment in passing about that girl that made you think oh great, now he's attracted to her, now I have to worry about that bitch being
right.
around.
Well, it's hard not to be completely paranoid when you clearly have reasons to be paranoid, he's having children with someone else, yeah, it's hard not to be paranoid about everything.
Yep, so pitting people against each other to create competition, paranoia, or hostility. Example, telling me, because he told me that the reason he loved you and the reason he was with you is because you were so much more supportive of him than I ever was. And you helped him really tackle his career and get ahead. And there were ways that you supported him that I never did and I was never able to. I mean, those words very literally came out of his mouth. and then telling you, like, basically to telling you about me that, like, oh, she was never supportive, and oh, she never had any ambition, or whatever he told you to make you, like, to other you from me.
Yeah, he would definitely say lots of things all the time, and he would try to make me feel like I was bringing about the interaction with you. Like, my paranoia is what caused him to, like, end up with you. You know, like, yeah.
So, using an outsider as a messenger instead of addressing concerns directly, they distort the truth and they avoid accountability. Example, instead of saying, I'm not happy, they will tell a friend or a family member or put it on social media or allude to it in social media in hopes that it will get out and someone else will be the one that starts the drama. Mm-hmm. Perfect example, every time I got knocked up. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, how did you find out? Not from him.
No, I found out
either time.
From one time from social media, and then the other time from his phone.
There you go. So, playing the victim to gain sympathy by making their partner seem unreasonable or abusive, which allows for a third party to be manipulated into siding with them. Example, I can't do anything without her acting suspicious or accusing me of something.
Yeah.
Very much, that right there specifically is very much how he utilizes his family for that part of the manipulation.
Yeah.
Is the playing the victim to gain the sympathy and, like, making sure that there's a third party involved and that, you know, the third party's on his side and sympathizing with him, and, you know, that way if you do get crazy or stand your ground or draw boundaries, then it's you against him and whoever else.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of weirdness, like when he wanted to go see the kids, he would be all super nice to me and, like, love bomb the shit out of me, and then the next day he'd be like, well, I have to go see the kids or whatever, and I'd be like, that's fine, like, I can drive you, but then there'd be some reason why I couldn't drive him. Or I was like, okay, well, I can take you to the train. And there'd be some reason I couldn't take him to the train. Like, he always had some reason. And sometimes he would even say that, like, you were creating problems. You know, like, oh, well, Kylie's on a good one today. Or just, I don't know, something like that. And he would make drama based on things that were going on in your life, even to the sense of saying that, like, that you got raped by the,
Yeah, exactly. So, the next one is ghosting and the silent treatment to increase anxiety. This creates a reliability or desperation to please them or keep the peace, which we both experienced very heavily during the nightmare that was the trip to Vegas. Amongst other times.
Was good enough. Like, I couldn't get out of the car fast enough. I couldn't get ready fast enough.
Well, and then the just disappearing for days or weeks at a time, like locking us out of hotel rooms and, like, taking the rental cars, and, like...
Yeah, he left Tyler with me for, like, a full day one time, and I was just like, where the hell are you? You know?
Exactly. So, okay. And then the other big one is comparisons and devaluing the ex. Lifting up one person while putting another down, or comparing or comparing you to like, I liked you more when we first met. You were more adventurous when we first met. You were more freaky when we first met. You did this more for me when we first met.
Right.
So it doesn't always necessarily have to be the ex. They could be comparing you to yourself.
Yes, he definitely did that to me a lot. Like, and especially in the end, like, you used to love me so good and just.
Whereas, like, with me, it was very much devaluing the ex-girlfriends because my behavior never shifted. I've been the same crazy bitch since day one. So, you know, that wouldn't have been a useful tactic for him to use on me, but he very much devalued all of the ex-girlfriends in some way, capacity. Either they were cheaters or they were, you know,
he would
whatever.
Just say
like,
stuff like,
yeah.
Kylie's a crazy bitch, you know, I would never be with her, like, and he would say the same thing to you about me, like.
Well, and but the big thing is, like, in the beginning, he wasn't necessarily saying that you were crazy. He was just saying, like, oh, no, like, you know, I care about her, and she's my friend, and, you know, she helps me, but I'm not in love with her. Like, I just need to figure out how to move on, gain stability, and move on. That was in the beginning.
Like, what I don't understand is how you spend every waking moment for years together with someone when you're not in love with them. It's like, why? It makes no
Literally,
sense. It sounds like a hell that you put yourself in.
Well, and it probably, honestly,
If you
living a
don't
double
love me,
life
then
probably
please,
was
like,
a double hell.
I don't want.
Or, I mean,
yeah, he
a
wasted,
living hell, like
he
double
wasted
life.
8 years of my life.
Well, and he wasted 8 years of his own freaking life because, hello, like, if you're not really in love with someone, what are you doing lingering?
Doesn't make sense. Yeah.
But that, once again, is the narcissism, and very much in his case, the codependence of not having that confidence and stability to do things on his own. He needs that fallback
and the
or
weakness and the inability to, like, tell someone when he doesn't want to be with them anymore. Like, he had to, like, push it to some scary ass place where it was like I had no choice but to leave.
Right. So the cowardice. I called him a coward
like,
many
I was
times
just really,
for that.
I'm a loyal person. Like, I may have not been the best always, but I am a very loyal person, and if I'm with someone, like, I'm committed to that person. So yeah, it was. I guess you have to punch me in the face before I'm like,
okay, I'm leaving, and I'm never coming back.
That's
okay, bye.
But yeah, I mean, like, no, he should have been a man about it and told me, like, leveled with me.
Absolutely, I 100%
instead of living
agree.
like 8 years with 3 different chicks involved, basically.
Chaos and confusion.
It's wild to me. Like, why anyone would do that to themselves is beyond me. Like, I like to be chill and, like, not have a very stressful life. So, why somebody would do that to themselves is just mind blowing.
All I know is my life has had more than enough struggle. I ain't trying to purposely put more into it. So it's
exactly. Yeah.
Wouldn't have been a personal choice on my behalf, that's for sure, if I'd have known the real truth about things.
Yeah.
So, why do narcissists use this triangulation manipulation tactic? Right? Like, what is the purpose? Why do they do that? Why is that such a cornerstone of their personality?
The more you get into someone's head and the more you confuse them and you get them stressed out about stuff, the more control you can have over them.
Exactly. Maintain control, which boosts their ego. It allows them to sabotage their relationships, the relationships around them, and all of those things compiled creates a dependency within the relationship and a sense on their end of superiority because they have that control and they can manipulate the way anyone and everyone feels at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
So, how was that used specifically? How was triangulation used with us? Well, there was a lot of the he said, she said going on, right? Like he would say one thing to me and one thing to you, and when we were both kind of fleeing that situation and talking to each other about it, we unpacked a lot of major moments of like undoing like the lies and the preconceived notion.
For example, telling you that I wouldn't allow him to come to see the kids.
Or
when
if
I was
you even
offering to buy the flight.
Absolutely. Or even if you go back to the very beginning, right? When I asked him who you were. Okay? Now here's the thing.
Well, he called me a lesbian, an old lesbian. That's what he
A
said.
lesbian cat lady. Right?
Hey, whatever.
You don't even own a cat. First of all. How are you going to label somebody a lesbian cat lady and they don't even own a motherfucking cat?
Yeah, it's wild.
Odd behavior, first of all. But on top of that, yeah, that's the exact. So when I asked him, like, well, who's that? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, that's my roommate. She's this lesbian cat lady. Like, no one to worry about, blah, blah. And I'm like, And I clocked it, and it feels yucky.
Me 5 times a day.
I clocked it, and it feels yucky in my intuition, and I'm like, and I literally wouldn't let it go.
Yeah.
And he literally said to me, and here's that manipulation, that triangulation, he said to me, are you sure that you want to keep pushing this? I leave in the morning tomorrow to go back to San Diego. Don't ruin the rest of our weekend. Because he knows me. And now that you know me, you know exactly why he said that to me. Because I'm a pushy ass bitch. And I'll keep fucking talking about it. And I will ruin the goddamn weekend.
Yeah, and so for me, he would exhibit that control over me by being like, you're in your head too much, and you're always on social media, and like,
oh yeah, like you're on social media too much. You're addicted to social media. You let social media brainwash you.
So he would push me to the point where I would delete my social media accounts because he would be like, you're purposely going and looking for problems, and you're going to create problems because you're looking for problems. And I'm like, I wouldn't be looking for anything if you didn't give me reasons to have to
be looking, right? So now let's pause there and talk about that red flag, because when you're going through it the first time, obviously it's a little bit easy to dismiss because you're like, well, I just want to know for sure before I just throw this all away and destroy it. I just want to know for sure. Now, looking back with the lived wisdom of that circumstance, you know, if there's even a question in your mind of something that you have to look into, it's not worth it. You already have your answer.
Yep.
You need to leave because there's no trust in the relationship.
Yes, ladies, if there's anything I can teach you about relationships with narcissists, is the second that you feel awkward about something does not sit right with you, walk away right then.
Because you're absolutely correct.
Your instinct is 100% correct.
Yep.
And you should never doubt yourself. Don't tell yourself that you're crazy or paranoid or anything like that. Like, just walk away.
Yeah.
And you will be thanking yourself later.
Yeah. And it's so much easier said than done in the moment because, like I said, that first time you really want to justify it to yourself. You're like, I really love this person. I've invested time in this person. Like, I don't want to just throw this away. I don't want to be crazy and just throw this away over nothing. No. It's never nothing. It's never ever nothing. It's always something. If you're questioning it, there's a reason, and you're right, and you need to leave.
Yes. And anything gets out of this podcast, it's hopefully that people will learn to walk away, because trust me when I say if something is meant to be, it's going to be.
And it won't be hard.
It won't be hard, exactly.
It won't be hard.
You won't have to be stressing about you know, what he's doing on his computer when he's on his computer all the time, or on his phone all the time.
Or locked in the bathroom for 40 minutes at a time.
Yeah, these are all red flags. So...
Yeah, pause, because there's a pocket of TikTok that thinks it's normal for a husband, a man, to lock himself in the bathroom and hee ha ha kiki on the toilet for 40 minutes. Listen, if your man is locking himself in the bathroom for more than a normal 5 to 10 minute shit, there's more going on there. Okay, it's not just, I need a break away from the family, it's too much. It's not just, I promise you, if it's more than 5 to 10 minutes at a time, which is any normal person's brain break and or really tough shit, it's something more, and it's not acceptable, and it needs to be addressed and fixed, or it definitely needs to be a boundary. If your dude is locking himself in the bathroom for 40 minutes a day, 2 to 10 times a day, not just avoiding responsibilities, like just being weird and shady, like that, don't stick around. Don't wait to find out why he's locking himself in the bathroom.
Yeah. Seriously.
It's not worth it. No. Promise. So then... the second point of how and why triangulation has affected us personally is his current attempts to influence our emotions and reactions, because he's still semi-consistently in contact with me in regards to the children, because as a narcissist, of course, he has to play that part of concerned father and I need to talk to my kids and blah blah. And I'm not discounting the fact that he cares about his kids on some level. I'm not discounting that. But we all know how narcissists operate, and it's less to do with his care for the kids and more to do with his ego and his what's the word I'm looking for?
How people perceive him.
Correct. Because obviously it would look really bad if he didn't talk to his kids and he didn't know anything about his kids and they were also on the other side of the country, right? So then so how he still attempts to influence us by saying there's been a couple of hiccups on our end because we are learning how to live together, right? We were strangers before we moved in together. We didn't know each other as human beings, and we had never cohabitated at all. So it's one of those, there's growing pains, right? There's things that we had to work through. And of course, for me, old habits die hard, and there have been points where I have reached out to like my sister or once or twice their dad and been like, I don't know if this is going to work. Like, this is just a lot different than I thought it was going to be. Like, things aren't going as smoothly as I thought. And it's less to do with you and more to do with the fact that we felt that there were resources available that aren't. So everything has taken so much longer to fall into place, you know what I mean? Which is very frustrating. And when you're already emotionally dysregulated and you're in an unfamiliar setting, it's really easy to vent and to reach out to people who at one point were a safe space, even if they're not anymore.
Right, yeah.
For example, my sister, you know, while she at one point would have done anything to help me out and come save me, you know, she hasn't been in a situation to do that. And so, you know, all she can really do is just be like, yeah, I don't know, ma'am, that was your choice. You're gonna have to just vibe it out. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But his response was one of triangulation, and it was something more of the lines of, I'm so sorry that you have to deal with that. I told you she's crazy. That's a very unstable, unsafe situation. You know, just trying to gain that footing back of control and being able to control the rhetoric, right? Control how we view each other.
Yeah, and he would send me messages as well saying, I'm so sorry that you have to live with Kylie. It's got to be really stressful. Like,
which, fair. It probably is. I am a single mom of 3 kids with no hobbies and no friends besides you. And I don't have a job, so I never have any time for myself or money to do anything. Like, yeah, fair. I probably am really fucking hard to live with. But also, you invited us to live with you. You signed up for that willingly, and you have the right to pull the plug at any given moment and be like, I'm done. I have to walk away. Yeah. You reserve that right, and you have from day one, and we've agreed on that while there is an open timeline, you reserve the right to say, hey, this isn't working for me anymore. And those conversations have recently started to come up because it has been quite a long stretch of time. This wasn't meant to be 2, 3, 5 years.
Well, I just thought it was going to be for a brief period of time until Ryan got his shit together. Oh my god, I did it again. So, yeah, I mean, and it's just taken longer than I had thought. But I mean, I want the kids to be happy, so.
Yeah. So then the third way that it has affected us is us navigating how to create our own way of communicating to each other and to the kids versus relying on toxic habits and experiences in regards to like co-parenting with him or, for me, parenting the kids on my own. Once again, because those conversations have come up about like this circumstance is like coming to an end, we're shifting out of this situation, I'm having to shift back into full-time single mom mode because he has not stepped up yet as a co-parent at all. And you are stepping down as my stand-in co-parent.
Well, and he's also said like things like, oh, well, you can just get her to take care of it now.
Yeah, I don't need to send you money. I don't need to provide for the kids because she'll pay for it. She'll do it. You have her. You live with her. When it's like, well, you're missing the whole point.
He knows I was only doing it until he got his shit together. So
right.
Like,
but at this point now he's prolonging getting his shit together because it's easier that way. Because everyone else has it under control.
Well, and he has another baby too.
Yeah. So he was constantly framing the other one in our situation as the problem. So he was constantly telling me like, we can't be together and have our family together because Christine won't just leave. I can't just get rid of her. Like she won't, like it doesn't matter what I do. She just sticks around and she just loves me. And I can't just walk away from something like that. I can't just leave her behind.
And just said, hey, this isn't working for me.
But it was working for him because you made good money and you offered him financial stability and you offered him so much attention.
Don't understand that mentality.
Intimacy wise, like
I will never understand using a person for things. Like
me neither. I don't get that. But he is coming from a very wounded place, right? This is all childhood trauma fucking manifested into an adult man trying to navigate the world, which that's not like we're giving him a pass and there's an excuse. No, there's no excuse. You don't get a pass. But psychologically, it does make sense. Knowing what he's been through and seeing how he acts and reacts to things, it does make sense. He's very emotionally immature. He's very codependent. That's where the addiction situation comes into play. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, there's no coping skills, like positive, healthy coping skills. Like, at all. Like, I think I've seen the man work out maybe 5 times ever in his whole life. Mm-hmm. But if he would get out and run a few miles a day, his mental health might be a little better.
Yeah, we used to do stuff, but...
Well, I'm not saying he's not active. He's active, but I'm just saying, like, to get those, like, chemicals in your brain changed, you have to make big changes.
Right.
Like you have to like commit to hiking 5 miles every morning during sunrise or something. You know what I mean? Like big changes.
Right.
And any big changes I ever saw him make were very temporary. Which is, maybe neurodivergence.
We do feel bad, still to this day, even after everything that we've been put through. We do feel bad for what, he's been through. And that's part of the reason that we got into this situation is because we cared so much about the person that we felt had been wronged or dealt the wrong hand in life,
Absolutely. When you love somebody and you see the tender sides of them and like when the mask falls away, right? And like the charade that's like in public falls away and you see the vulnerable sides, and like there's transparency there. And you have those intimate moments that are not seen by other people or shared by other people. Those are the things that we as humans cling to in those hardest moments.
Yeah.
Especially when it's hard to love somebody. Those are the things that like flood our brain. It's like our brains trick us into keeping love for people.
Plus, I was so involved in trying to make sure that like I helped him stay sober and
the healing part of it,
trying
and the growth.
Exactly. So there was a lot to distract my mind from what I should have been focusing on.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's one of those, that's why it's talked about a lot when like DV awareness comes up in conversations, that the average DV survivor takes, I think it's like 7 times before they leave for good. 7 times to try to leave before they actually leave. And some people it takes a little less, and some people it takes way more than that.
Yeah.
I personally have spoken with women that stuck around for 30 years before they finally left. And it's like...
It's heartbreaking.
God only knows how many times they thought about or tried to leave in those 30 years.
Oh my gosh. The number of times, like, just on the bathroom floor crying, it's very frustrating, especially also the distraction of his addiction, like it's really hard to watch someone that you love struggle with addiction.
Absolutely.
You almost take on all the pain and everything as well onto yourself, and also the guilt and feeling responsible potentially for
relapse,
right? Exactly. It's a roller coaster, literally, the craziest roller coaster I've ever been on.
It's I agree. It's definitely taxing emotionally and mentally to be in any dynamic with an addict, but especially a romantic dynamic with an addict. Because there's so much at play there. There's so many wounds, like gaping wounds that an addict has. And as you're like bandaging 1 or 2 of them and you're like, okay, like no more blood, like, okay, these ones are gonna heal. And then you start to address another one and then whoops, this one sprung a leak. Like, shit, like we didn't even get to these 2 yet. You know what I mean? Like, it's very time consuming. Your whole world revolves around their next fix, their current bender, the financial problems that come with it. I mean, I know people who are dealing with the fact that they love addicts in their life who are clean and sober for years or decades, who are struggling with gambling addictions because one addiction for another. And that's another discussion that's in those circles. And, that's not really what this podcast is about, but a lot of what we experience is very heavy in those subtexts, you know what I mean? Like those sub discussions, because I personally believe that a lot of addicts are narcissists and vice versa. And obviously there are outliers, but it's like most of the narcissists that I have met have some sort of addiction issue. And secondarily, almost every narcissist, or did I say that right? Almost every addict I've met, almost every narcissist I've met has an issue or had an issue with addiction. And every
addict that you've met has also had some narcissistic tendencies.
Very narcissistic tendencies, not some. Very narcissistic tendencies because of that need for manipulation, right? When you're an addict and you're actively in your addiction and you're looking for those things that you need, unless you're somehow like silver spoon fed type person, you're always looking for that next come up or the next way to get your fix or whatever, and there's always manipulation involved. And so it's like, you know, obviously that's speculation on my end because there isn't necessarily like a scientific correlation, but from lived experience, very much that is the case. And I think probably a lot of people would agree with that, but correct me if I'm wrong, you know what I mean? So my last thoughts on the triangulation thing in regards to our experience, our situation of living together, raising the kids together, him being absent from the co-parenting dynamic, but still actively playing the role of the abuser every chance he gets. The fine line between being honest with the kids because they are of a cognitive age to be asking questions and observing what's happening and knowing the length of time that has passed since they saw their other parent, right? While protecting them by not bad-mouthing him or causing any sort of like parental alienation. That's really hard because speaking the truth about the situation that happened and honoring their experiences when they talk about what happened to them and how they feel and their perceptions of what's currently happening, and not saying how we feel about it, right? Stating the facts versus saying how we feel when those things are so closely related. Because how we feel is, this is a tricky, difficult, annoying situation, right? The facts of the matter are we're dealing with co-parenting with a narcissist, and that can be tricky and annoying and frustrating. You know what I mean? So it's like...
Well, and the kids are really good at, you know, it's funny, a lot of people don't look at, like, even a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old as somebody who's digesting what you're saying, but they really do. I firmly believe they take in so much information, even if they don't fully understand it at that moment. And so they have made their own decisions, their own minds up about their father.
A majority of, not just him, but just everything, all of it. The situation of how they're living, like, you know, we talked about before that we do check in with them regularly. But they've made their mind up about all of it. About him, about us, about the living situation currently, about what we're shifting into. What does that mean when we move out of Dee's house? What does that mean for us, right? We're starting to have those conversations. Why does it look like that for us? Well, because at this current point in time, Dad's not involved on any level. That makes things trickier. It just does. But they are very observant and they are very articulate and they do...
Very smart.
They do have their own opinions and their own... Especially the oldest. She's in double digits in age. So she's very, you know, while she's still growing and she still has a lot to learn and she's still kind of like figuring it out in here, she's got it clocked already up here. You know what I mean? So I do want to kind of end this episode with some additional resources in regards to research on triangulation in relationships, whether it is a sibling dynamic, a romantic dynamic, what have you. Triangulation is a very consistent and
it's tricky.
Well, it's a consistent form of manipulation and abuse, but it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It works. It works. It's easy to, triangulation is easy to use on people. I don't know why that word slipped my mind, but the articles that kind of touch on this, they do touch on this, is there's one by Psychology Today, and it's the toxic dynamic of triangulation in relationships. And of course you can Google these and read them for yourself, but that article explains how narcissists use triangulation just in general and how it affects each person involved. The National Library of Medicine has an article called Narcissistic Parenting and Its Effects on Children, which discusses the long-term psychological impact of being raised by a narcissistic parent, which is huge, obviously, especially in our situation, because while you are the stand-in co-parent currently, that's not a long-term thing. So I'm going to have to shift into figuring out that dynamic with the narcissistic ex that we share, while you get to kind of walk away and leave it all behind. You know what I mean?
That's messed up.
It's a little messed up, but what can you do,
Yeah, but it's also, not my life. Like, it was my life, and I wanted to do the right thing by that life, and, it's ultimately not where I
It's a
belong.
chapter that you're closing. Yeah, absolutely. And then the last one is something that I think is super relevant to my situation specifically. And then hopefully maybe relevant to someone who's listening at some point, which is the Co-Parenting Solutions has an article called The Parallel Parenting Model. And that talks about why parallel parenting is potentially the necessary approach when dealing with a narcissistic ex instead of traditional co-parenting. And it's because of the way that a narcissist processes and reacts to things. So those are helpful resources if you want something to Google to read more about triangulation and how narcissists use that in their romantic dynamics more specifically, and their co-parenting dynamics, and how to kind of work with that, because narcissism is not something, unfortunately, that has a cure. We kind of just have to deal with it, right? So on that note, triangulation is something that I have caught myself, actually, as I have prepared for this episode. I've caught myself reflecting on times where I personally have used triangulation to manipulate a situation in my favor. And it's really interesting that I, kind of had to do that self-reflection, because I didn't really realize, you know what I mean, that that's something. And I think that is a tactic that is taught to us. I really do think that it is. And that's not necessarily anything that I need to go into, but I just thought it was an interesting tidbit, and I did want to add that because I think my parents have narcissistic tendencies, and that's, the examples that have been set for me throughout my life by the adults that I was raised by have definitely made navigating a lot of situations in my life a lot trickier, including my dynamic with the father of my kids and even my dynamic with you.
Yeah, that's good. You're good at reflecting. I personally don't know whether, I feel like I have probably in my younger years done something like that, but I feel like for a narcissist, even though they may not be fully aware of it, it's a lot more calculated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's where we're going to leave episode 4. Thank you for everyone who tuned in live. We'll be, going through comments during or after lives while we're editing to see if you guys have any questions, throw them into the chat. If you have any comments or input or anything, definitely, engage. Let us know what you want to know about us, because we're here to talk about us and our life and how we live the way that we live and why we live the way that we live. And, while we're on episode 4, we are just still getting started. We have a lot more to go. So, tune in next week, 9 p.m. Saturday night, just like always, Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, catch us streaming on Monday night at midnight. And yeah, catch us streaming on Monday night at midnight.